Avengers Endgame has finally hit theaters around the globe, and that means it's time to stop and talk spoilers. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share all of your thoughts on Avengers Endgame, and as this is a spoiler review, you can say whatever you want. You don't need to post spoiler warnings. This video is here to dive into all the details, all the stuff you loved, all the stuff you hated, all the specific, the details, the spoilers. If you're new to one of my spoiler reviews, these ones function different from my main content. This is much more like a podcast. I'm going to shoot it as close to possible in just one take as I can. There's not going to be as much kind of flashy stuff on the screen. Just me talking about this movie from the beginning of it to the end, scene by scene, plot point by plot point, talking about my thoughts, my theories, all of that fun stuff, and hopefully starting a great discussion with all of you wonderful people. One final thing before I get started, I've got some new t-shirt designs in my merch store. You can see the link for that down below in the description. If you enjoy talking about movies too much, you can tell the world by wearing one of these delightful shirts. And with that said, we're going to get started talking through Avengers Endgame, kicking things off with the opening sequence, which is Hawkeye with his family. I thought this was a great way to kick off the movie and just show the perspective of what happened from just a normal person. So you have him out, they're doing a family picnic. He's teaching his daughter how to shoot the arrow. The camera pans down, shows he's got his little anklet bracelet on because he's on house arrest the same way that Scott Lang was in Ant-Man and the Wasp. And then he turns around for a second and his daughter's gone. And he turns around, the rest of his family's gone. And my wife is sitting next to me when I watched it the second time. She's like, I'm done. I can't do this. I can't watch this movie. This is just too much. Just right out of the gate, she starts freaking out over where the movie just begins because it's just so heartbreaking to imagine this scenario happening. One of my theories in one of my theory videos was that this would be the first scene in the movie, and so I at least got one of my predictions right that this potentially could be the first scene in the movie. Is a great little way to open the movie. But from this little intro, it cuts to our Marvel logo, and instead of the usual music and kind of page-turning sound effect, instead it kind of played, I don't know what the song was, I'm not familiar with the specific song, but like a classic rock song starts playing, and then we see Nebula and Tony playing paper football and he's teaching. It's kind of this cute little funny scene. It's probably smart to break the tension of what they just showed, which is a father, a husband losing everything and realizing kind of what's happening. So you cut to something a little bit more lighthearted. And then from that, it cuts then to Tony giving kind of like this, leaving a death message for Pepper and talking about how bad things are, how he's had an infection and all sorts of stuff. So putting that little funny bit there to break the tension of it all without going so far, probably a wise little choice. When it first started and they were playing a classic rock, I was like, where are they going with it? What do they think? Like, oh, okay. This is probably a nice way to kind of figure out our tone for this movie as it's going to go along. And then we kind of get the monologue from Tony that we saw a large percentage of that in the trailers up to this point in time, that he's thinking he's going to die in space and he's kind of leaving this message and talking about the different things that they had done. And then he just kind of collapses on the floor. Nebula picks him up, puts him in the chair, and then he kind of starts to wake up. And then in front of him is this glowing angel, and it's, as we know, Captain Marvel comes to save the day. I thought that this was a little bit quick to have him rescued, and I'm not quite sure if that's the movie's fault or the marketing's fault, but because the marketing, the first trailer doesn't show Tony back, and so then we spent 3 months with Tony in space, or I guess it was more like 9 months with Tony in space, and they show us he's stranded, they're abandoned, he leaves a death message, and so then we have a certain emotional attachment to Tony is stranded in space, and then the movie kicks in and, he's rescued in 5 minutes or whatever. I mean, very quickly rescued, in which case, okay, that whole thing you kind of sold me on with the marketing, you didn't really mismarket the movie, and you were trying to not use all that time travel stuff that's later in the film, but it felt a bit rushed to me. And I think if I just saw the movie without the marketing, it probably wouldn't feel that way. So Captain Marvel comes and rescues them, which leads to kind of thought number one on how exactly is the exact timeline of all of this. Because at the end of Captain Marvel, the post-credit scene shows Captain Marvel showing up, little pager, it keeps turning off, and they're like, what's happening with this thing? Can you turn it back on? And then she's behind them. She goes, where's Nick Fury? So that was chronologically speaking the last that we'd kind of seen her, and then she shows up here saving Tony. So when I was watching the movie, my perception was she's just flying through space and just happens to catch Tony, like just happens to catch Tony and fly back with him or something like that. And then I was like, okay, all right, wait. As I was thinking through this, I was like, wait, probably happened is that the post-credit scene from Captain Marvel takes place before this movie happens, because I'd assumed that was a scene from this movie, and maybe at some point in time it was, and then different way they decided to put it in Captain Marvel, but it would probably make a whole lot more sense. Captain Marvel shows up, I don't know, a week after the snapping, shows up, the scene from Captain Marvel happens, and then they go, we got a guy named Tony out there, maybe you can go and save him. And so then she goes out there, but the movie kind of happens so quick that the way it plays out, that it doesn't make it entirely obvious what the timeline was, but it probably makes a lot more sense that it's that second timeline, not that Captain Marvel just happened to find Tony out in space. But once again, these are some of my theories. These are some of the ones I actually got right about Captain Marvel potentially being the person that finds him at some point in time and brings him back. So he comes back, gets off the ship, and he's like, I mean, this is like the most broken we've ever seen Tony. I mean, he's like, at first he's kind of in shock, like, I lost the kid, and then Steve's like, we lost everybody, and Pepper's right there and gives her a hug. You get a nice little shot of Nebula and Rocket holding hands, and just kind of showing it like the unity of the survivors and kind of the way some of this kind of plays out. And we cut back inside, and sad Tony's gone, and this is like as cynical, dark, angry Tonys we've ever seen. And I mean, he's calling back to Ultron and like, I told you we needed this, and I had a vision about all this stuff that happened, and I needed you, Steve, and you weren't there. Steve's trying to like be this professional soldier man. Hey, let's rent it. Do you have any tactical information like that? I wasn't expecting this Tony in this movie, especially not this early. I was like, whoa, well, okay, this is not a take for Tony that I was expecting, and he's viciously angry with them. Full on, he's not in good enough health to have helped them anyway, but basically collapses, taking his deal out. They have to put him down to try and help him out. Captain Marvel kind of steps up, and she's like, all right, let's just go. I'm going to go get Thanos. And everyone's like, wait a minute. Like, we're a team here. I know that you're new here and you do space, but like, kind of work together on stuff, and have some banter back and forth on all of this, and this leads to the scene where Thor walks up and does the Stormbreaker trick that we've seen in the trailers. A nice little shot. I don't think they wrote Captain Marvel particularly well for this movie. I was hoping that we were going to go into this one because most of the characters were good in their initial films, and then they got a lot better when they were in an Avengers film. Because of the camaraderie, because of the banter between everybody, kind of upped their level as soon as they showed up. And so kind of Thor, it was all right. Captain America, a little bit bland. And then once they're together and going back and forth, suddenly they're more interesting. And then as you moved into phase 2, Black Widows and Winter Soldier, and then of course going into phase 3, like every movie's a team up movie. And it seemed to make everyone better, more entertaining. And I was really hoping as we went into this movie that's what we were going to get for Captain Marvel. Because that little shot of the little Thor bit, I thought that was a nice little thing that kind of they had a nice little thing between the two of them. That does not play out in the movie, but the way that they keep writing her in this movie is like, I got this covered, I'll take out Thanos. And it was like, we're a team. Like, are you going to work with us? I got this covered. I was taking, other planets don't have you guys. I was helping and she's written to isolate herself. She's not looking to join the team. She's not looking to build camaraderie or any of that stuff. She just wants to she thinks she's better than everyone else, which maybe she is, maybe she isn't, but you don't make me like you when you show up late into the game and you want to write off all the characters I've been invested in for 11 years and you've been around for 2 months. I don't want to see you do that. That doesn't make me like you. That makes me think that you're very stuck up and a jerk. It makes me think you're full of yourself. She is very powerful, of course, but there's all these other characters that's not the way that they handled themselves, even though they were very powerful characters. So I do not understand why they wrote her so like in people's faces, abrasive. I got this hand covered. I don't need you. It's just a weird way to present the character to everyone in a way that, Yeah, didn't care for that part of it. So they decide to go out on a mission, and we're gonna be understaffed, and but we got to do this. I don't know how we'll live through things if this doesn't work. Then we get our title card, and they head out into space to try and get Thanos. And I guess this was also one of my early theories, is that very early in the film, they're going to load up, definitely Thor, definitely Captain Marvel, head out into space to try and take out Thanos. And my statement was that they're going to fail miserably, which they didn't really fail in what they failed in getting the stones. They did not fail in finding Thanos or defeating Thanos. But so I was a little bit mostly correct on that one. From my perspective, corrected up. So Nebula tells them, hey, he's going to form a garden. There's a great little line from War Machine. He's like, that's cute. Thanos has a retirement plan. They head out to try and track him down at this planet, and they found out that he's done one more snap since the decimation. Show up there, and he's farming, and they cut to him, and you just see him, and he looks just rough. Like, okay, it's like, was that from, which type snap is that from? Because he does not look good. And, think if you're Thanos and you got the Infinity Gauntlet, you get some nicer clothes than that, because normally your armor suits are pretty slick, and now you're just wearing kind of like these throwaway shirts. So they show up, walk in, and, right off the bat, Captain Marvel just throws down on him. They grab him. They're holding him. Thor comes and cuts his arm off. And you're like, whoa, they're getting right to it right out of the gate. They're not kidding around here. Cut off his arm. And they're like, wait, where's the stones? Like, the stones aren't in the gauntlet. I don't know. I understand what's happening here. So he explains to them that, they're gone. What do you mean they're gone? I used the stones to destroy the stones and basically almost killed me. No, I can't be that. And like, you're lying. Where are they really? And Nebula's like, no, he's not a liar. It's a lot of things. He is not a liar. And Thanos has this moment. It's like, hey, that's very sweet of you. I was probably a little bit mean to you, but that was very kind of you. In mid him being real, like having this nice sweet moment with Nebula, Thor just chops his head off, blood sprays on faces. And, Thor, what did you do? I went for the head. And whoa, like, this is not the direction I was expecting this movie to go at all. That they get Thanos, they defeat him in the first 10, 15 minutes of the movie, but he's wiped out, head chopped off. Scene kind of fades out to blur. 5 years later, and we get our time jump. That was one of the ones I was almost positive there's a time jump in the middle of this movie. Pretty sure we're going to jump in time, and that's how you have, in the same with Scott Lang's walking through the streets and everything's like torn to pieces. This looks like a lot of time's going to pass, so that did happen. So we cut to it, and it shows the shot that was in the Super Bowl trailer of the city, and it just looks dark and bleak, and it cuts to this meeting, and Captain America's meeting with people. This guy's like, I went on a date with a guy, and like, what did you talk about? We talked about how, how the world's changed, and I started crying. Was that one of the Russos? It looks like one of the Russos. I wasn't positive, and when I saw it at the press screen, it seemed like some people were snickering a little bit when they showed him, so I was wondering if that was like an M. Night Shyamalan type director cameo, but I thought that was one of the Russos. I haven't looked it up yet. So they had kind of like back and forth. Everyone was talking about it. Captain America's like, yeah, we got to move on. And, we've been given this world and we got to make of it what we can. He has this nice little speech for them and, trying to build everybody back up. And then it cuts to San Francisco in a storage unit. And you've got the van from the Ant-Man movies locked up in the storage unit. You see a little rat running across the buttons and turns it back on. I guess I'm okay with that. It doesn't seem like the most satisfying reason as to why at this moment in time did he get out. And I guess it doesn't, to some extent, it doesn't really matter how much time has passed because it's just kind of, it's not that, where things start feeling real convoluted when something like that happens is like, the rat touches the buttons, and then Black Widow happened to find this other thing, and they got this other information over here, and this thing happened over here. Like, no. A random thing happened 5 years later, there's no other things that happen at the same moment as this other 1 in a billion chance thing that happens. Actually, this is where Tony Stark even calls it 1 in a billion that he's able to get out. So he's able to get out. It's one of the contrivances of the plot that this just happens to happen. Maybe they could have come up with something a little bit more elaborate as to why something like this would happen. You could have had the daughter be the one that finds the van and then, she turns it back on or something. Like, there's something you could have done that could have gotten a little bit more of a like aha moment. But then again, you start stretching out. All we really need to do is get Scott Lang out of here, so you don't need to build a whole plot line about his daughter searching for him and doing technology. So I can kind of accept the contrivance of. So he gets out, the security guard sees him, and this is, the Russos worked on a show called Community about 10 years ago, and there's a couple of different Community cameos in here, and so the security guard is Ken Jeong from the Hangar movies, of course, from Community. He was in Community. He's in Crazy Rich Asians. You've, of course, seen him in a bunch of different things. So he shows up. That's probably, I'm pretty sure that's the ties, the Community. So like, let's get some of our Community friends to show up in Endgame. So Scott gets out, and he's like confused, like, what's going on? He goes to this memorial, starts going through things, sees his name on it. He finally starts to have this realization. Everyone thinks I've been dead, runs back home, and his daughter's there, and older, which is nice, like a real powerful little moment that, the guy that with a young daughter, she didn't die. So not you have Hawkeye who's going to a dark place because he lost everybody. You don't do that to the Scott Lang who's like, that's a sweet guy. Paul Rudd, that's such a mean thing to do to Paul Rudd. So he loses his girlfriend, his mentor person, but he doesn't lose his daughter. So that's kind of nice. And so then he decides to pack up and head cross country to Avengers Base Camp. So we cut to Avengers Base Camp. Make sure I'm not missing anything here on my little notes. So he goes to Avengers Base Camp, and you get this little briefing where you've got Black Widow, who just seems kind of like just trying to do her job, but checked out. She's like sitting there with her feet up on the table, cutting a sandwich, and you got people there, everyone in front of them, talking to her. And it's nice to see like, Nebula, Rocket, Okoye, Captain Marvel, like they're all working together to try and do this. So it's like a nice, like, oh, that's pretty cool. The survivors are like all being kind of this new version of the Avengers trying to do what they can. And there's something added here that was a little bit confusing to me, and maybe you guys had some different thoughts on this, but certainly add in the comment section what your take on this was. So you start talking, and Okoye, it's like, yeah, there's an earthquake under the ocean, and Black Widow's like, what did you do about it? She's like, what? I did what you're supposed to. You don't do anything. There's an earthquake. What can I do about it? And then it kind of leads into this conversation with Captain Marvel, and like, are you coming back next month? She's like, no, there's stuff going on. There's stuff that's happening on Earth is happening everywhere else. Like that's the language used in the movie. The stuff happening on Earth is happening everywhere else. But like, I wasn't like, are you talking about like civil unrest? Because obviously, like we're in a post-apocalyptic world. Is that what they're referring to? Or when they say that the things that are happening here, are they saying that like space and reality was just hit with something so big that there's like ripples? And like when it was said in the movie, I interpreted it like, oh, is that something where they're going with this movie that something in the space-time continuum is broken and it's causing side effects? Because right before this, we had a conversation about an earthquake. What are you going to do about an earthquake? So I don't know if they're meant to tease something more, if that's a hint of where things are going, or if it's just they're just talking about civil unrest and like, okay, we need intervention. I don't know. But I took it to mean that it was more, and then the movie didn't take it in the direction I thought that it was going. We see Captain Marvel with a haircut. I hate the haircut. I hate the short haircut entirely. No bueno from my perspective. But so especially when they cut to it, you're like, whoa. I'm not a fan of that right there. And so everyone leaves. War Machine's there. And her talking to like a bunch of not federales, that's the government. Cartel guys were killed, and he's like, yeah, it was Clint. It was Hawkeye. Hawkeye did this. He's like, I don't think I even want to find him. And Black Widow starts crying. And it's like, this is like maybe the most actual emotion we've ever seen from Black Widow, both in this film and this scene right here is like the most she's been like a broken person, that we're just seeing her like hurt at what is going on and what has happened. I thought it was real powerful and kind of setting up where we're kind of going to go with him. And War Machine leaves, Captain America shows back up, and they're talking about moving on and kind of have these heartfelt scenes. I think some of this stuff maybe could have been trimmed a little bit. It's a 3-hour, 1-minute movie. I probably could have been a 2-hour and 40-minute movie, 2-hour, 45-minute movie. I think that there's just some of the lingering stuff on like, people move on, but not us. Want a sandwich? I could make you some food, but I see you're already on. Like, it kind of lingers on some of this stuff a little bit too long, and I'll get into a few other things I think could have been trimmed at certain parts. But I think they could have shortened it a little bit. Not a lot. I'm not talking about cutting the scene. I'm not talking about big cuts. I'm talking about 15 minutes out of a 3-hour movie. So they're there, and then someone shows up at the door. It's Scott Lang. It's the scene we saw in the first trailer. And I believe in the first trailer, the footage that they show in it has short hair Black Widow. Shows her with the Infinity War haircut in that first trailer. I guess whenever I edit this, I'll try and cut that in. Maybe I'll forget. And we'll find out. Maybe I'm totally wrong. But I believe that, and that's some of the conversations I remember having in the comment section, like, no, there can't be a time jump because in the trailer it showed that happening and she had the short hair. It's like, yeah, but they're doing some deception stuff here. Scott Lang, I'm pretty sure, is going to show up after a time jump. And which is the case. So I think that's one of the places where they did some deception. He comes in and he's immediately going like, I was gone. I was trapped in there. Like, oh, it was a long 5 years. No. It was like 5 hours. Time works different. What if we can come in and come out? And why would that work? And they're like, a time machine? He's like, no, not a time machine. Okay, yes, a time machine. Like, I know I'm talking crazy. She's like, and Black Widow goes, yeah, I get emails from a raccoon. Nothing's really crazy to me anymore. But so like, let's try, like, we can figure this out. And you kind of get that first moment of hope for them in 5 years. Like these two very broken people that can't move on. And someone shows up, time travel. And just even adding Scott Lang is just I wonder if that's part of what their strategy was. I mean, if the nature of Ant-Man and the quantum realm time travel fit into the story, but also as the person that can be that is so lighthearted as a character, so innocent and naive, he kind of breaks the tension of how heavy Black Widow, Captain America are in sequences like this. But they say we need a big brain. We got to go get someone with a big brain. So cut to Tony Stark off at a little cabin by a lake, and you see him walk outside, and you go, oh, he got married. Well, and he sits down, and there's a little tent there, and I go, there's gonna be a kid in there. Bet there's going to be a kid, and then little daughter walks out with a little blue Iron Man helmet, and he's like, oh, I made that for for your mother, and she never wears anything that I buy for her anyway, but setting up the finale of the movie that she has her own suit, and that she probably knows, she's familiar with this stuff. Like, that's like a thing now that she can do this stuff. As soon as the daughter showed up, I was pretty sure Tony was going to die in the end. Like, as soon as that happened, oh, he's going to die. My theory, so if you've watched my theories videos, if you watched my Who's Gonna Die video, Tony was number 2 on my list. But the reason that I was like, I don't want him to die, I don't think that would be very satisfying, and why he probably might not die, is because it's very unsatisfying if you have Tony going into Infinity War, about to get married, talking about wanting to have kids, and then you kill him before that can happen. That just feels cruel. It doesn't feel like this universe. It doesn't feel satisfying. Do a time jump. He gets to be happy for 5 years. He gets to rest for 5 years, and he gets to have a kid. And suddenly, everything I just said is off the table. No, he got that. He got his big finale, and he can die a hero's death. So as soon as the kid showed up, I was like, I bet he's going to die, and they're going to start establishing a bunch of this stuff right now. And then the crew shows up and they start talking to us. No, we can't do it. It's a 1 in a billion shot. You're lucky you got out of there. Get some great little lines of dialogue. No. We'll follow the rules of time travel. We won't interact with ourselves. We won't place any gambling bets. Like, are you betting on humanity's future on Back to the Future? And so there's some nice little time travel jokes inside, or pop culture reference jokes inside of the movie that I thoroughly enjoyed. But so he tells them, no, I'm not going to do it. And Steve's like, this is our second chance. And then you get the telling moment that once again also goes to where I thought he was going to die. Tony's like, I already got my second chance. This is it right here. And I can't lose this. And you have that moment where you realize Thanos' snap wasn't bad for everyone. It destroyed some people. And for some people, it was their second chance to start over. And for Tony, he gets the 5 best years of his life. I don't know if the movie explicitly states that, but that seems to be very much this new peaceful Tony who kind of is like as angry as he was 10, 15 minutes earlier in the movie. Like, he's like, I just don't think this can work. And his concern isn't, I'm mad at you, Steve. I'm mad at you guys. His feeling is, I can't lose what I have. And so then they're like, all right, we got to get a big brain. Cut to the diner scene, Professor Hulk. And I'm totally fine with Professor Hulk. I thought that worked. I thought that one worked. Big change. Like your first impression, you're like, hey, Happy Hulk, was like, whoa, what's going on? You're like, why is he so smiley and happy and wearing glasses? And I immediately kind of went with it. Like I got on board. I thought that I've said before elsewhere that I thought Mark Ruffalo was the weak link of Infinity War. His performance was weird. It was off. I just didn't, the whole thing was kind of odd to me. It didn't make sense. So then we get to this movie, Professor Hulk. I dug it. I thought it was fun. And just even like kids walking up to him. And so you have this Bruce Banner, who's now this new Professor Hulk character that is like come to grips with who he is. And so he's like this new happier version of himself that's super nerdy. And so he's like getting really into dabbing and things. I was totally down with that. This is another scene, though, I think it went out too long. The Ant-Man, hey, let's get want a selfie with me. That feels like a deleted scene to me. Something's like, it's kind of both times I saw it, the theater was laughing, and then it was like, this scene's still kind of going on, and then the last little just like the phone. When he gets that, they get a second laugh. Seemed like you got a 3-hour movie. Did we need this to be a minute-long bit about Ant-Man? Like, hey, I'm a hero too, and it's a little. Are you uncomfortable? I don't need it. Do you want it? We didn't need to keep on doing that. So I think they could have trimmed that, and that got a little bit cringy right there as they started to overextend that little bit in the film. And that's one of the ones that when people are like, hey, when can I go to the bathroom? I was like, the diner scene. When they go to a diner, or depending on who I was talking to, when the Hulk shows up eating lunch at a diner, that's when you could take a pee-pee break. So next scene, we get we recruit him to start working on time travel. He doesn't really know what he's doing, and so you get this fun little scene where he's Scott jumps into the machine, and then he turns into a teenager, an old man, a kid, and he pees the suit, and fun little scene. Kind of running parallel to this, you have Tony at his cabin, and he's doing the dishes. Clearly his mind's working a little bit, and sprays some water, looks over and you see a picture of his dad, priming us a little bit. Like I was thinking, he's going to see his dad. We're just kind of going with him looking at his dad. And then he reaches beyond it, and it's the picture of Peter Parker is actually the one that he's looking at. But putting the picture of his dad there primes us for what happens later in the movie. Like a nice little way to make people go, I'm looking for something. So he looks at it and he goes, like, you see, like he knows, like, I'm sacrificing this kid for my current situation. Maybe I can do something. So he starts working on it, and he cracks the code of time travel. And this is another one where they kind of jumped over probably skipped over some of the important pieces that needed to be here. Of like, okay, did Steve give him a flash drive with all of the PIM technology, with all of the research on all that stuff? Or because the way it plays out in the movie is, over here is Scott Lang with PIM technology. They talk to Tony over here. Tony does research on his own. And then Banner's doing stuff over here. And then he shows up and is like, here, put on these bracelets and this technology over here will work. So he kind of skipped over being like, explaining exactly what was kind of going on. Once again, 3-hour movie. We don't need a subplot about Steve bringing flash drives. But I was like, what did Tony do over here? So he figures it out, and then he has this moment with his daughter, cute little scene where he's saying potty language in front of his daughter, and you can see like he's weighing in his mind, I lose this. This is going away if I do what I'm about to do. I don't think I can survive what's about to happen. I don't know if any of us will survive. This is such a long shot to do this. Comes downstairs and starts talking to her. Probably like, hey, what are you reading about? Compost? That's cool. I cracked time travel. And so she's like, oh. He's like, I can bear it. I don't have to do this. And like he's trying to get her to convince him to say no. And Pepper's going to tell him, no, go ahead. Yeah, we're happy. So let everyone else be sad. Let the universe be ruined because of your happy. Like, no, she's not going to let him do it. She knows she's not going to rest. Like, you have to do this. Like, you have to go for it. So then the way it's actually cut together, I did these a little bit out of order. They do this scene with Scott Lang, Hulk, time travel, fun little scene, Hulk, time travel. And Steve Rogers walks outside, and then you see this car kind of zoom around the parking lot, pull up. Tony gets out, and he's like, I did it. GPS, they just need bracelets. And they had that nice little reunion. This is the first happy conversation that they've had, the two of them, in, will it be 7 years? 7 years? Because it would be Civil War, since they last were on good terms and when things fell apart. And you've had a lot of time to process a lot of things. That's where you see kind of a different Tony. Like, he's still just as sarcastic, but he's not like cynical. He's resting for 5 years and just trying to do the right thing and make things right. He's like, I don't want to die. Like, I don't want to die in this one, but if we can set it right, let's set it right. And then he goes and he pulls out the shield. And this is like the ultimate, like, you're supposed to have this. Like, I mean, where they ended on Civil War, Tony just says these horrible things to Steve. Like, you're not worthy. Like, my dad made this. You're not worthy of it. It's like, that's hurt people say hurt people and say hurtful things. And that's where Civil War kind of ended with the two of them. And like, all that's kind of gone. He's like, no, you're supposed to have this. And we're supposed to save the universe. Let's go recruit a team. And so then we start our little recruitment sequence inside of the movie. And so you have Black Widow goes to Japan, and you finally get Hawkeye Ronin joining into the story. He's like literally mowing Yakuza down with his sword. And Black Widow shows up afterwards, and she's like, we found something, and we need your help. Maybe we can do something about all this. Don't give me hope. Don't give me hope. Like, just such like a heartbreaking, like just perfect line for right there. Don't give me hope, of this guy that is so broken he's turned into a serial killer. He kills bad guys. He's like the Punisher now. Punisher with a sword, so that's cool. But don't give me hope. You give me hope. I just can't deal with it not working. He's like, no, we've got something, and you believed in me. I'm gonna believe in you. We gotta set this right. We gotta try. So he comes back, and they have this little time travel banter thing right here. Okay, actually, that'll be in a little bit. I guess we'll talk about Thor at the moment. And so they head off to New Asgard and driving down the road. One fun little scene. You got Hulk in the back with Rocket next to him and smiling. Such a funny image. You pull into it, and Valkyrie's kind of seems like she's running the show there. And they're like, where's Thor? They're like, well, he hasn't come out. He probably won't see you. And they open the door. You walk into it and have the big reveal. Thor is massively overweight, gained a ton of weight, and he's hanging out with Korg, playing video games, playing Fortnite, chewing out Noob Boy or whatever the guy's name was. And he's not the same guy. He's just like broken, and they're like, we've got a plan to undo what Thanos did. And they're like, don't you say that name. Don't you say that name. And they're like, we've got beer. And he's like, all right, what kind of beer? And they jump on the ship and follow him. What do I think about Fat Thor? I think this is the biggest oops with the movie, what they did with this plot line. I don't mind that they like, let's have Thor get out of shape and he's broken. But the problem is where they went with the character is tonally inconsistent with everything else. So one of the things, Thor's always been unevenly written in these films. You watch Thor 1 and then you watch Thor Ragnarok, not the same character. You really even watch Thor 1 and you watch the first Avengers. By the first Avengers, 2 years later, whatever, he's already like, you will not speak poorly of Loki. He is royalty. He killed 50 people. He's adopted. Like, he's cracking jokes, like these, Joss Whedon-esque one-liners. So he's always kind of had a very different flavor depending on who's writing him. Infinity War had this very serious version. There's jokes in there, but he's like this very serious character. Remarkably different from who he was a few months earlier when Thor Ragnarok came out. And the character we have in this movie that's fat and wearing sunglasses and, looks like the Big Lebowski, even a joke in the, or looks like the dude from the Big Lebowski, doesn't feel like the guy that we saw earlier in this movie. He doesn't feel like the guy that was in Infinity War. He feels like a follow-up to Thor Ragnarok. Thor Ragnarok, Thor is kind of dumber. He cracks more jokes. He's kind of doing this sort of thing. And that's who this guy is. And I don't think it fits the movie. So I don't know exactly how you change that up, how you dial it back, but they went so far with it that it feels like we're doing a bit. It feels like we're in a different movie. That's the best way to describe it. It feels like Taika Waititi showed up to direct every scene with Thor and to write his dialogue, and the Russos and their writing team wrote everything else. It doesn't feel like it fits in this movie right here. I guess I've said that a bunch of times. So that's kind of, and it just kind of kept feeling that way to me. Right out of the gate, I was like, okay, that's kind of funny. That's a nice little touch. Oh, we're still going? Wait, I mean, I don't think we're going to have a second time jump, so he's going to stay like this for the whole movie. I don't know how that's going to play out. But so cut back to they do a time travel they have this time travel banter scene where they need to test it, and they've only got 2 test rounds, and Scott actually shoots the deal and comes back up, and he's like, whoops, looks like we've only got 1. And they're like, why don't we just go back in time? And War Machine got some of his best lines of the whole, since Terrence Howard was playing, since I'm a Terrence Howard fan, since Terrence Howard, some of his best lines was like, why don't we just go back and like baby Thanos? Great. Loved that little moment. Whoa, that's dark. He was like, it's Thanos. We can kill Thanos. So then they have every time travel movie, you have to have your exposition scene where you try and explain your rules of time travel. We get our one right here, and they do a great job of like, what are you talking about, Bruce? Haven't you ever seen any of the Hot Tub Time Machine, Back to the Future, Die Hard? Sorry, not Die. And then and he kind of explains the way the rules work. And I'm still not sure if they stuck by these rules or what this means for how it sticks with the rules. Like, if the timeline is it's a hard timeline, the changing the past doesn't change the future. Like, what does that mean for, is there now like 2 Lokis out there? Or does it mean, we'll get to this a little bit, like Loki changes in this timeline. Does that mean a new time stream is created? Like, what is all this? What does this mean in light of changes that did happen inside of this one that were not undone at the end of the film? I'm very curious about that. So then they have Hawkeye. He goes back in time, sees his family, grabs a glove. And it almost feels like that's like, he's like, I'll do it, whatever. And then as soon as he kind of sees his family again, it's like, this can work. Like, you don't give me hope. Whatever, I'll do your crazy test. I might die. And then he sees him. He's like, wait, I can get this back. And he seems to be like, he's back to old Hawkeye. He's not like, I'm going to kill people anymore after that little bit right there. And so then we break up into our teams, and they have like a sequence where they're like, where are these stones? Where are these stones? And that's where you have like Thor come up and he's like, describing the plot of Thor the Dark World as a drunk guy. Like, and then, oh, my girlfriend here. Oh, Jane, we had a fling before. And there's some nice little bits in there where it cuts to Paul Rudd, and he's like really listening intently, where everyone else is like, oh dear, this is embarrassing. But it felt like we were cutting to a different movie. Every time they would do this, we're in one movie, and then we cut to Thor doing a Saturday Night Live sketch, or like one of those where they did that bit that they put on YouTube, like, where was Thor during Civil War? And they had him with his roommate, and they were like really funny. That's what these scenes were like inside of the movie for me. So they come up with their plan, and they figure out, wait, 3 of the stones are in New York in 2012. And then if we go back to Guardians of the Galaxy, and then we go back to Thor the Dark World, we're good to go. So they break up into their teams, head off into the past to make all of this happen. So just kind of I'll talk through each one of these. I'm not going to try and go with each of the, how the story broke down. So I'll talk through each ones as it kind of plays out. So we go back to the Battle of New York 2012. They show up, and there's a nice little bit where 2012 Hulk is like smashing Chitauri and smashing things, and then Professor Hulk's like, oh, this is embarrassing. And they're like, dude, if you're going to walk around up here, you got to look like the Hulk. You got to be angry. It's like, okay. He like flicks a car, and it's like half-heartedly doing it. It's like embarrassed that he's doing all the Hulk stuff. And so he heads off one direction, and then our people kind of break out to different places. We'll kick it off with Bruce Banner. He goes to the Sanctum, New York Sanctum, to see the Ancient One. He thinks Doctor Strange is going to be there because he's not like he's best friends with Doctor Strange to know exactly when he showed up. Hey, where's Doctor Strange? And he's like, he's down the road doing surgery. If you're looking for him here, you're about 4 years too early. He's like, well, I'm going to need that stone around your neck. And she's like, hard pass on that one. Not going to happen. And he walks up to try and grab it. And she does her little Doctor Strange projection deal, knocks the soul out of him. And then the story cuts away and does other things, but we'll just kind of walk through the whole one right here. So then he cuts back and he's like explaining the future timelines, and we just need the stones to make a gauntlet to fix it. And then what she says is like, we can't do that because these guys are like protecting our realm, and we've got 6 of them right now. You take one out, it creates a new stream off in a different direction, and this new reality stream that was created doesn't have a protector in it. It doesn't have the stone here, and so we're going into chaos because without the stone, all these forces will converge upon us. And so I can't give it to you. So he goes, but what I can do is I'll bring them back to you. We'll leave and you're going to see me again in 2 minutes. I don't come right back because or me or someone else will come back and give you the stone back. And she's like, no, we can't do that because what if you fail? What if you die? We can't do that. And then so he goes, no, but if that's true, if this is so important, why did Doctor Strange give Mr. Thanos the stone? She's like, why would he do that? Because that would be a mistake on his part. And if it was a mistake on his part, that meant I made a mistake in picking him. In which case, I didn't make a mistake. And if I didn't make a mistake, he didn't make a mistake. He knew something that we don't know. So I better let this play out and trust this. So she's like, here you go. You can take it. And you just got to bring it back. Because if Doctor Strange did that, I guess it's all going to be okay because he's the best of us. So he leaves. Here's what I'm thinking on this one, though. So she says that if you take one out, time streams kind of break out in these different directions. All these forces will kind of converge and attack. But what does that mean for in the future where they're gone? 6 of these deals blown to pieces. There's none because Thanos destroyed them in the future. Does that mean that these forces she's talking about, is that the future of the MCU? That's my current running theory, is that like Thanos destroyed them, so there's these forces that were supposed to be held off by the stones, and maybe that's what the Eternals is going to set up. Like supposedly Eternals is coming out next year, and so then stones are gone, these new forces start to show up to kind of rock the world of the Earth and the other realms. That's my theory as to where some of this stuff is headed. All right, so then we got Steve, Ant-Man, and Tony basically kind of walk through the end of Avengers. They go to Stark Tower and they're kind of looking around and they're trying to like sneak around the building at different points in time to grab different things. So Steve follows a couple of guys with the wand into an elevator, and it's like a recap of the Winter Soldier elevator sequence, and it's like, oh, this is kind of fun. Like these guys are the way this is all playing out, and he's like, I need that case right there. They're like, we can't give it to you, and he goes, Hail Hydra. And then it cuts to him just walking out carrying it. It's like, oh, that's fun. That's a nice little tying back to even more movies than we thought that they were going to tie back to inside of this movie. So he walks off with it. And then unfortunately, Steve Rogers and the way it plays out, I'm telling this out of order, but so 2012 Steve Rogers sees him, and then we have slightly older, more cynical Steve Rogers battling 2012 Steve Rogers that thinks it's Loki that he's fighting. And he's like, I can do this all day. It's like, I know. And so they fight back and forth. They, of course, know each other's moves. They get knocked onto the ground. And then Steve ends up, like, 2012 Steve is like, wait, how do you have that thing of Peggy? And he ends up defeating him like, Bucky's alive. What? Grabs the wand, touches him to the chest, and gets to walk off with it. And then you get maybe the best line of the movie. That is America's ass. Like, I wouldn't think that would be the best line of the movie, but they happen to set up enough pieces from Tony Stark does the first piece, then Scott Lang, Ant-Man sets up the next piece, and then Captain America checking himself out and saying that line. That's a great joke right there. Downstairs in the building, Tony is trying to steal the Tesseract, and Thor's carrying it. He's got Loki there with him, and then Robert Redford walks out. Like, that's a nice touch. I didn't know he was going to be in the movie, and just really tying pieces together in a way that makes sense. It doesn't feel forced. It would make sense that those guys would show up to grab this stuff inside of this movie. So they bicker back and forth. Ant-Man takes out Tony's heart. Tony claps on the floor. They push the case over. Tony grabs it. He's about to go through the door. Hulk picks the door out, so Tony gets knocked out. Case lands on the floor. And here's where things get interesting. I don't know where they're going with this. Loki from 2012 grabs the Tesseract, jumps through a portal, and leaves. So in 2012, now Loki wasn't taken back to Asgard, Thor the Dark World, which we even saw him there. We saw him saw him in 2013, so we saw him there in the Asgard sequences, but then we see Loki head on off to who knows where, which creates now a alternate reality, alternate timeline, or within this timeline where Loki's alive and can have a TV show. And it's a different Loki than we've seen. He's kind of the Loki. He's the Loki we know minus the development of Dark World and Ragnarok. So what does that mean exactly? Where exactly is this character going? And he has the Tesseract, which, what does that mean? So that's where I'm very curious what you guys' theories are on Loki having the Tesseract in 2012. How does that time into their timelines, their view of time travel? Because they, like, we can't go back in time and kill baby Thanos, but Loki took off with an Infinity Stone. And, okay, so what does that mean? And does that mean also, once again, that the universe is in danger because that one was removed and created a new time stream, as per what our ancients said, and that one didn't come back? So I don't know. So we get downstairs, and Tony's like, I didn't get it. And like, Ant-Man is actually talking down to Iron Man, which is a nice little moment of all the ways that Tony's been condescending to Ant-Man and their few interactions. And now suddenly he's the one freaking out on him. And so Tony goes, I know where it's at again, and I know where some Pym particles are. Steve, do you trust me? And we get the scene from the trailer. I do. And they shake hands and they're like, let's do one more Hail Mary. And they head on back to New Jersey, 1970. I thought this was a nice little sequence. I really enjoyed this one. The 2012 stuff, I thought felt a little bit, I didn't fully get there for a number of different reasons. Whenever they would cut to footage from the Avengers, it looks different. It was shot by someone different people, and so it looked different. So kind of pulled me out a little bit when that would happen. And then when you've got like Tony sneaking around in the background, you're like, wait a minute, like would somebody have seen that? Even the way it worked out when they get the case and they kick the case away and Tony walks over and picks it up. The case with the Tesseract, no one was like swarming it. Like as soon as it was put, 10 guards didn't run after it. They're arguing with a god, an Iron Man, and secret Hydra agents, and no one swarmed over to grab it. Several things. It just seemed a little bit like it could have been staged better, handled a little bit better. All the Battle in New York stuff seemed a bit off to me. And then they go back to 1970. I thought it worked. Right off the bat, we get our Stan Lee cameo, and nice little bit. If it had been if we didn't know it was his last one, it would have been a nice little cameo. When it's his last Stan Lee cameo, you never know when someone's going to die, but you kind of wish that they could have, if it would have felt a little bit more like, oh, this is his last one. It was just kind of like, oh, he's driving in a car, make love, not war. Okay, fair enough. That'll work. And so we go into the base, and Steve Rogers, they go into an elevator, and we get our second Community cameo. One of the main cast members, once again, she's in the elevator kind of, who are you guys? Where'd you guys come from? How long have you been around here? And that's when, as soon as she showed up, it was like, oh, I guess they're putting a bunch of their Community buddies in here. So then she goes and tells some people broke in, we need to track them down. But so Steve Rogers goes and makes a phone call to Hank Pym saying, hey, you got a package here, and people are opening it. And so they cut to Michael Douglas, de-aged 49 years, de-aged Michael Douglas back to their 1970. And so you look at it and be like, wow, I'm not sure what I'm looking at right now, because this is like, that's Michael Douglas when he was like 25. This is wild what you're doing right now. And so he runs out the door, and it's nice little de-aging. If you guys didn't know that was de-aged Michael Douglas, did it look right for you? It didn't look as strong to me as certainly the Nick Fury stuff from Captain Marvel. But then again, de-aging someone 49 years is a impressive thing to do. So tell me if you picked up on the fact that that's what they had done, is de-aged a 75-year-old man back down to 25 or whatever it was. So he runs off. Captain America runs in, grabs the Pym particles. People are chasing him, so he has to cut into an office. He realizes he's in Peggy's office, and his picture's right there on the desk, and she's outside the door. I was like, okay, they're going to find some way to do something with this. This is going to pay off at some point in time in this movie. And then you have Tony. He runs down into the basement to get the Tesseract from a different year, opens a case, pulls it out, and then his dad is standing there. And he's like, doesn't even know how to respond to him. And they just have this, like, one of the most sentimental sequences in the entire MCU. 22 movies, 11 years, and this might be the most sentimental that they've ever gone. Of just like a son talking to his father that has been dead for 40 years, and or 30 years. 30 years, 30 some odd years. And he never spoke to him as an adult, certainly not since his redemptive arc, certainly not since he's had kids. And so he's kind of reflecting as his dad's about to become a the father of him, and just some nice little beats and kind of final moments. And once again, teasing like, all right, we're sending this guy off. This guy doesn't have too much longer, so we got to like close things out. And so we have this little moment with him here, with his father. And then they take off and with their stuff. So then we'll head on over to Asgard 2013. Sorry, my nose itches. Whenever I talk too long, my nose starts itching. And I've been talking now for 50 minutes straight. So we go to Asgard and Thor's like, I can't do this. And Rocket's like, what do you got to do this? Slaps him and starts smacking him around. He's like, I'm going to go get the girl. And so he gets off to do it. Thor's wimping out. He's not doing what he's supposed to do. So Rocket just has to kind of try and pull out the ether on his own. Which I don't know how this one entirely makes sense in the light of the plotline of Thor: The Dark World, that now inside the timeline, a Rocket Raccoon showed up, sucked the ether out of her, whatever that means. I don't know how that even makes sense in light of that movie. But Natalie Portman came back. Though Natalie Portman shows back up in the movie, it seems like she didn't want to be in these movies anymore, but there she is. Maybe there's hope that her and Thor will get back together. But she shows back up, and Rocket steals the ether, and Thor is walking through trying to like say hi to his mom, also having a little moment with her. And so she walks up to him. She's like, I'm a witch. I know that obviously you're not from my time. Obviously you're from the future. Look at you. You need to eat a salad. It has a nice little mom moment. It's probably her best stuff because, before she was just kind of the queen and doing queen type things. And here she's being a mother to a very broken Thor. And that's where it just, feels like he's in a different movie than everyone else. It's just so overplayed. Like, I am totally from the future. It's a funny line. It's a very Thor Ragnarok line. I don't know if that humor fits with the rest of the movie. And so then, he's like, Mom, I need to tell you something. No. I'm fine with my future. You need to make your future good. And pretty clearly, he's on this redemptive story. He's not on the death. He's not on a death train or anything like that. And so it doesn't feel like he's setting him out that past. And then right before they're leaving, he's like, wait, puts out his hand. Mjolnir flies into it, catches, he goes, I'm still worthy. Like, oh, as soon as that happens, like, Captain America's going to get his moment with the hammer. This is going to be nice. So we got a couple more little plot lines here in the past. Morag, first group of people, we got War Machine and Nebula show up in the opening scene of Guardians of the Galaxy, or second scene in Guardians of the Galaxy, to try and take out Star-Lord and sneak in and grab our little stone there. So they grab in, have some nice little banter. Once again, War Machine's getting some of the best lines that they've ever given him. They go in, they steal it. They're like, all right, let's go ahead and get on out of here. And right as they're about to jump, because she's there in this timeline, her brain starts to sync up with the network. So Thanos, or Nebula from 2014, starts like glitching out a little bit. And they're like, what is going on here? Thanos gets word of it. Figure out, he's like, I think I know what's happening here. So right as they're about to jump, Thanos stops her from jumping. They go and grab her and kidnap her. And I was like, wait, wouldn't War Machine pick up on this? Wouldn't he know that something's afoot? No. When they get back to the future, they all show up at the same time. As long, like, a year could pass, 2 years could pass, and War Machine wouldn't know the difference because she just shows up right there. So Thanos grabs her. They read through her memories. They see his own death. He sees, okay, these people stole the stones, and these people are annoying. And 2014 Nebula, who's just desperate to get Thanos' approval, is like, I got a plan. I know what we can do. And so she ends up returning to the future in Nebula's place, and they leave kind of redeemed Nebula in imprisonment while she's like, Gamora, help me. Final little plot line. We head back to Vormir, where Hawkeye and Black Widow show up to talk to the Red Skull, and they're probably, it seems like Nebula should have mentioned a little bit more. They would have had more of a conversation. Like, yeah, the two of them went there, and like there's some reference of like the sacrifice. Someone probably should have known someone needs to die to get this done. And as an audience, we should have known that too. I was kind of just tracking along with the ride. Like, okay. And they're like, okay, wait a minute. Oh, they're gonna have to make a choice. As they walk up there and they realize someone's got to die. Thanos came up here with Gamora. Gamora didn't come back. He left with the stone. And then they have banter back and forth where both of them are like, it's got to be me. bicker back and forth, and then they start fighting back and forth, each of them desperately trying to kill themselves to save the other person, and then in the end, Black Widow is the one that dies. And in light of the movie, in light of the arcs that they're establishing, it's a lot more satisfying for her to die. Because Hawkeye needs a redemptive story, because they set him up to finally actually have an arc in one of these movies. Normally he's just kind of there as this guy and like, look, he's been taken over. Look, he's got a family. In this one, it's like, look, he's a guy that's broken and is in need of redemption and in need of saving his family. And this is huge. So he has a really good arc in this one. And so it was the right choice for her to be the one that would die, to make the sacrifice so that everyone else could live. Come back to the future, and I have to cut right now because I have to go pick up my son from school. We have made it to about the third act of this film. We are back in the present, and the present in this context is the year 2023, and Tony constructs a new Infinity Gauntlet out of his nano Iron Man technology that they put these stones into. Meanwhile, we've got evil Gamora from the past there. So they decide, all right, who is going to put on our little glove here? And Thor's like, hey, I should do it. And they're like, oh, I don't know, it's gamma radiation. You're not gamma, you're lightning and not in the best of shape. And so they decide Thor, Thor's not our best bet. Let's give it to Hulk. He's like, I'm made of gamma. It's going to not be fun, but I'm our best bet to be able to do this. And while this is going on, Nebula's down the hallway, playing on the portal deal to make Thanos and his crew show up. In 2014, Thanos to show up in 2013. So they are about to have Mr. Hulk do his snap, and they pause like, so what we want you to do, don't change anything from the past 5 years. We want the people that vanished 5 years ago to appear now. That's what we want. People 5 years ago, they come back now. Nothing from the past 5 years is changed. This is going to be really important when we jump and we start talking about Peter Parker going back to school a little bit later in this video. And what on earth does that mean? What on earth does that mean for Spider-Man Homecoming? So he snaps or puts the glove on. It's like, this is messing him up pretty bad. He snaps. Pause. Like, okay, what's happening? Ant-Man walks over towards a window and you see some birds. And Hawkeye gets a phone call. One's over and it's his wife. And, honey, is that you? And his wife is on the phone as our kind of like very subtle way to bring everyone back, because trillions of people just returned to the galaxy and they represent it by a phone call and birds chirping, which is a real nice way to have the moment of satisfaction while also saving the later reveal that's going to happen. But because parallel to this, Nebula released Mr. Thanos and all of his people up right as they're like, oh, I think it worked. Then you have the shot it's different. The shot in the trailer is different from the one that's in the movie, but Scott's like looking outside, and in the trailer you can see like orange start to form behind him, and they show it, and it's Thanos just starts bombarding the building. And so you have War Machine, Hulk, and Rocket get knocked down to like this lower level where there's like water rising up. So Ant-Man decides to go and try and rescue them. So they kind of get sidelined for 10 minutes or so here, 15 minutes. Wherever Clint is at, the Infinity Gauntlet, our new Iron Infinity Gauntlet, as we'll call it, it falls down this well. He kind of tracks it down there. He's like, all right, what am I supposed to do with what's going on here? Turns around. He's like, what's that sound? Shoots an arrow down the hallway, and it's like a shot out of Aliens, the actual movie Aliens. And there's all these creatures that are chasing after him. So he starts running down this tunnel, which was shown also in the trailers on numerous occasions. And so yeah, he's running through the hallways trying to keep this thing safe. Running parallel to this, Gamora 2014 goes to good Nebula. She's like, what happens in the future? Like, we're not just friends, we're sisters. And so she frees her like, we got to stop him from doing all this stuff. Hawkeye down in the drains, running, he's shooting arrows, blowing guys up, climbs up, lays on the ground, he's tired, and Nebula walks up. He's like, hey, I know you, and kind of tosses the Infinity Gauntlet to her, and she's like, hey, Daddy, I got some good news. He's like, uh-oh, that's not good. And instead of it doesn't play out too far, because right as this happens, then Gamora and good Nebula walk up and Good Nebula is pretty harsh with former self, because former self's like, I can't do it, he won't let me, just shoots her right in the chest, takes her out, and so they're able to hold on to the Iron Infinity Gauntlet, and Hawkeye is able to have it as we move into the final section of the film. So then our real big showdown takes place, where our big three decide to have a sit down and chat and throw down with Thanos. Thanos is just sitting outside, like, and you saw this in the trailer. They actually, in one of the trailers, you could see him sitting there, like, what? They're showing us some shot of Thanos with his helmet off, sitting there, like, what's going on here? And now we know what the context of this is they're like, it looks like it's a trap, but I don't care. Let's just go for it. Thor's like, are we going to get him? And then he has both of these deals and charges at him with Stormbreaker, Mjolnir. We go into this big, gigantic throwdown battle. And from here on out in the movie, it's just every shot is a big payoff moment, like 11 years of payoff, every single shot here for the rest of the movie. They're battling him, and you get Iron Man standing there with these charger deals and Thor shooting all the electricity through Iron Man to blast Thanos. You have Captain America throwing the shield at him, duking it out. Thanos is doing quite well, though, and so at some point in time he punches Tony and knocks Tony out, and so he starts kind of just duking it out primarily with just Thor, gets the upper hand, and in fact has Stormbreaker, and he starts pushing down on him, cutting through his armor, and you're like, okay, this is looking bad. And then they cut to a shot of Mjolnir sitting there on the ground, and you see it start to move a little bit, and you're like, this is happening. They are going there, and we're about to get something awesome. And it cuts to Iron Man picks it up, and he is worthy, and he just goes in to start throwing down on Thanos for like 2 minutes straight of all sorts of attacks. He does lightning attacks, and I don't even know how he would know how to do a lightning attack, but he just goes at him. Every shot that you'd want to see if you're going to get this quick little throwdown where he's got the hammer and everything, you get it here. But Thanos, of course, is supposed to be incredibly powerful, and so he's not able, and he's still just a human with a really good weapon. So Thanos knocks the hammer out of his hand. He starts chipping away at his shield. His shield is almost destroyed. He gets knocked back. I forgot to mention earlier, Thanos stated before the fight broke out, he was like, I'm just going to wipe it out. You guys just don't understand how bad the world is. You guys have too much hope. I just need to start over with a world that doesn't know anything else. That it's going to be a perfect world designed by me. And so he's going full crazy now. Not just half the universe, all of the universe is going to die so I can build something better. And then as Captain America's beat up on the ground with his shield that's falling apart, he's like, normally this isn't personal, but I think I'm going to enjoy blowing this planet up because you guys are obnoxious. Captain America stands up and tightens his shield, and he's like, I'm not going to give up. And then as he's saying this, Thanos' armies start to form out everywhere. Ships, Chitauri, all this stuff that you've seen massive, or the army from both the Battle of New York as well as Wakanda, all of it combined in one place with Thanos in the middle of it. And then Captain America, the only person standing there to stop this army of people from taking over planet Earth and destroying the universe. And even just wide angle shot of the whole deal. And then he gets a little, hey Cap, you there? This is Sam. Hey Cap, you there? You're like, it's about to happen. And then when Doctor Strange portal opens, Black Panther walks through, and you're like, oh, and it starts going wider and more portals start opening up, and everywhere they're just showing all the people that died just walking through, and everyone kind of forming into place. And as the portals are all opening up, then you have Ant-Man pick everything up, and he's got Hulk and Rocket in his hand, and then Rocket's on War Machine's shoulder, the shot we've seen in the trailer. And everyone from all of the movies up to this point in time just keeps appearing. Even Pepper shows up in a suit. Everyone shows up in this big, massive line. And even the way they're opening the portals, it's like there's multiple worlds all opening up, just pouring out. You can see Wakanda right here. You can see Titan over here through the portal. Just this huge, one of the biggest shots ever put on screen in a film, as people keep coming forward through all of this. And then we go to Captain. Avengers Assemble. And basically, from the moment Captain America picks up the hammer. Until this point in time, my theater's just been going nuts. Not at the press screening, but general public screening. He picks up the hammer. This was my friend Andy. I saw it with him, his theory. So he's like, yeah, just going nuts. And then the throwdown, he's going nuts. And then it's like, oh no. It pauses for a second as Thanos' army forms. And my wife's like, oh, what's going to happen? How are they going to get out of this? And then just Black Panther shows up and it's, yeah. And then Guardians of the Galaxy and Drax, yeah. And then Spider-Man swings by, yeah. Everyone's just freaking out. I'm hearing people crying like, oh, this is how we're here. And Avengers assemble. And just everyone goes nuts as this massive battle erupts in front of us. It's a cliche in big movies like this that at some point in time you call in the cavalry. And it looks like that it's our moment of where all is lost, that they've given everything and they're about to be slaughtered by the larger group, and then the cavalry comes in to save the day. Black Panther, Ubuntu, the other tribe. Sorry, I'm blanking on it because I've been talking for an hour and a half straight. Other tribe shows up, stuff like that. They always do these little moments. This might be the most epic one of all time, where you've got Captain America by himself, followed immediately by the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe arriving and war erupting up in front of us. So then we get a bunch of sequences in here of people being reunited. Probably one of the more powerful ones is Tony and Peter. Obviously because it's one of the driving arcs of this story specifically is Tony trying to get him back. Like the reason he would be willing to sacrifice everything he has, like, I have to get the kid back. I just can't let him down. I can't fail him again if I think I can fix this. And so then Peter Parker's being very Peter Parker, like, oh, it was like just a moment ago. He said 5 years had passed and then we're just kind of here and we're in battle. And Tony, who's, in the past was like, nope, not going for a hug. Just trying to open the door. Just gives him this big hug. And Peter goes, oh, this is nice. Very nice little Peter Parker moment. Then you have Star-Lord shooting a bunch of people. Looks like he might get taken out. And then Gamora saves him. Gamora, is that you? And runs over to give her a hug and everything like that. And so she just starts to, knee him in the balls. And we get some nice Chris Pratt humor right there. And you kind of get the, and she's like, this is the person. He's like, well, it was between him and a tree. This real, makes a joke out of it. But at the same time, you get the nice little reunion in there. Our fights going on. I mean, of course, all sorts of, everyone's getting the little moments inside you. They keep cutting to people doing something really cool everywhere you look. But then you have Scarlet Witch walk up to Thanos and she goes, you took everything from me. He's like, I don't even know who you are. And he's like, you will. And just starts doing everything she can, tear him to pieces, smash him, throw balls at his face. She starts lifting him up into the air and ripping him to pieces just through her electric energy. And Thanos' last-ditch effort to stop this, he goes, just open fire on everybody. And so then they just start bombarding everything and everyone with all that they have. And in the midst of all of this, I'm not quite sure the exact moment where it happens, but Tony runs into Doctor Strange and he's like, hey, are we in the good one? You said there's 14 million we lose. Are we in the one where we win? He goes, if I tell you, it doesn't happen. And the first time you watch that, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's nice. And then when you watch it a second time, you know what that means. If I tell you, yeah, this is the one. If I change anything, then you don't do what you need to do. It doesn't play out right. This does not work if we do not follow this exact one path. And I mean, those types of lines of dialogue in here, they've done a little bit of cheating in Infinity War and this one to justify certain things. Because as you watch these movies, you have all these moments where you're like, why don't you do this? Why don't you do this? Why didn't he do this? Why would Doctor Strange do this? Well, the way you can excuse all of this is you just have Doctor Strange say, I saw 14 million options. This is the only one that works. It's a screenwriting trick. You're kind of cheating when you're like, he saw the future. It's the only one that works. Nothing else works. It's a good line. It's a nice little moment, but you're cheating screenwriters to make this work. Granted, when you have a movie with a bunch of superheroes with time travel, of course you have to cheat to make it work because there aren't superheroes and there isn't time travel. So fair enough, but you're cheating a little bit when you do that. But so yeah, they have this little moment. But so they're opening fire, just blowing everything away through all of this, and people die. And it starts to have a little bit of like, are we going to win or lose? And then suddenly all the guns turn up towards space. They start plowing everything down, and Captain Marvel comes, saves the day, takes out the big gigantic spaceship, and so that saves the day. It's like another Calvary inside of the Calvary. Captain Marvel shows up to take out the spaceship, killing everybody, which is a nice little moment inside of this. But the big thing kind of going on in the middle of the battle, that when you do a battle of this size, the thing that can happen is that it just feels like noise. And we've all seen movies like this where it's just stuff happening, there's things everywhere and just noise. And the way you correct that is that you make something very specific that you're wanting to try and have happen. Instead of just 1,000 people here shooting at 1,000 people here, you have an item that you need to get to a place, and so you're following a plot of the item, and so you can get engaged beyond just seeing a bunch of stuff on the screen that's explosions and stuff like that. So they have this, Hawkeye's got our Iron Infinity Gauntlet. I hope I don't drive people crazy calling it that. When I wrote that one, I was like, that's pretty funny. And then they say it enough times, I'm like, is that as good as I think it is? So he's running with our Iron Infinity Gauntlet, and then Black Panther's like, give it to me. And so he gives it to him. They're like, what are we trying to do with this? Thanos is eventually going to get this thing. So Ant-Man's like, they're like, we need to get this stones back in time. So Ant-Man's like, I got a time machine, because the other one was blown up, and it's in his van. And so then they create kind of this plot line where the van's over there, and they're trying to get to the van to go back in time. As creating urgency and a plot line inside of the massive battle, this is a very effective way to do all of this. But they're forcing it a little bit. The idea that there's like a van in the middle of it and Thanos wouldn't immediately go, oh, they're trying to get there, I'll just blow that up instantly. A little bit of screenwriter cheating going on with some of this right here. But so then gives it to Black Panther. He runs around. He does a couple of his power punches. Eventually gets passed along to Spider-Man, who's swinging along. You get a bunch of nice Spider-Man moments in here where he's riding on a Pegasus with Valkyrie. And so all kinds of crazy stuff keeps on happening in the middle of it. But so as he's swinging through it, as they're trying to get all the way to our little van up there, people keep getting in the way. Eventually, Peter Parker gets knocked down. Captain Marvel's like, yeah, got something for me, buddy? So he hands it over to her. She picks it up. And he's like, I don't know how you're going to make it through all of this. And so we get our girl power shot where they do like this big wide shot where all of our female superheroes start like showing up all around her on the screen. Another big, massive, epic shot. And then they just charge forward into this battle. And she's flying super powered. I think at this point in time, what happens, Thanos figures it out, and I think he blew up the van. Or did that happen? I think he blew up the van. But he blows something up so she can't get over there. Gauntlet's getting knocked around. And so she just starts throwing down on Thanos with everything she's got. And you even have this really nice moment where like they're duking it out for a little bit, and then he thinks, I got you. And then he goes to like punch her, and it's just blocked by her energy shield. And you're like, oh, she's about to win it. She's gonna do this, and starts to pull the glove off of him as this super powerful character. And Thanos just grabs the Power Stone up and power punches her, and she goes flying backwards. And you're like, uh-oh, we're in big trouble now. This isn't good. And so Thanos starts to like put the glove back on, put the deal back in it. Iron Man looks over at Doctor Strange, and you see Doctor Strange in his like, who's always like steady Dr. Hands, well, besides, at the beginning of his movie, steady Dr. Hands, Mr. Confidence, and it looks like he's doubting himself for just a second as he's looking at him, and they make kind of eye contact with each other, and Iron Man runs over to like try and grab the glove and tries to fight Thanos. Probably not going to work since he's Thanos and he's got the Infinity Gauntlet. Duking it about battle a little bit, throws Iron Man to the ground, and Thanos lifts it up, and he goes, I am inevitable. Looks down, and there's no stones in his glove, so it's, it's a cool piece of technology, but it doesn't quite do what he thought it does. And so he looks over, and you've got Iron Man, and I had some conversations with people like, how is he able to grab the glove off of him? Why did the stones, why didn't they do that? But what's going on here? It's because it's an Iron Man technology, and they established in the previous film, it's this nanotechnology that kind of builds and rebuilds. So if the whole battle in Infinity War is like his suit getting knocked off and then it kind of rebuilding. When Hulk puts it on, it like forms and does this sort of deal all over it. And Iron Man's the one with the technology. Like, he's the one with in his little head right here can tell the suit what to do. And so Thanos has the glove on, Iron Man gets near it, so he can just be like, do his nanotechnology and search for him. There's my interpretation of what's going on, because it's his tech how this was able to play out like that. So you see him there, and it starts to like form all over him with the Iron Man nanotech stuff, and you're seeing it like, put veins in his face, as this is probably not healthy for a normal person like this. And he goes, I am Iron Man. And you get just that classic, I am Iron Man. He snaps, cuts to white, and then you start to see Thanos' army turn to dust in front of everybody, as everyone's watching, as Tony snapped them out of existence. And then you see Thanos looking around at all of this, at his failure, and absorbing, you're not inevitable, dude. You failed. You didn't do it. And then he turns to dust. And then we look over, and Tony's not in good shape. And so War Machine rests him down. Oh, Tony. And Peter Parker runs up and starts trying to talk to him. And Pepper walks up, and, whatever his vitals, and everything's critical. Looks like everything's critical, and you just have Tony look up, and Pepper. That's all he's able to say in all of this, and she's like, you can rest. And then Tony, you see his heart slowly, or his little power energy deal slowly fade out, and Iron Man dies, saving everybody. And as I said at the beginning of this, I didn't think they would kill him going into the movie, because I didn't think it would be right to not let him get married and have a kid. The movie allowed him to get married and have a kid, and that took that off the table. And so, if you're trying to close out their storylines and have satisfying conclusions where everyone has something that feels right, you have to have consequences. You have to have death. So you lose Black Widow. And are you going to lose Steve? Are you going to lose Tony? And they found a way to where both of them have an ending to it where you're like, you get the happy ending, you get the sad ending, you get the bittersweet ending, you get a little bit of all of them. And so I was very okay with it, with where they went with this. I was like, okay, this fits. This makes sense. You earned this moment. You put the pieces in place where this can feel like a proper passing along of all of everything kind of going on here. So we start our epilogue of the movie, and we go into full like Return of the King endings here. There's so many endings to this movie. And I thought it the first time I watching it the second time, I was like, wow, there really are so many different endings to this movie. So the first one we get Clint going back to his family, and it looks like he's just returning from vacation. He's not as much of like, you're back. I mean, he knows that they're back, but it's more like, hey, I haven't seen you in a couple weeks. Not, I haven't seen you in 5 years because you died and turned to dust in front of me, and I killed a lot of people because of it. Then you get the one that I think could be a little bit problematic here, is you have Peter Parker going back to school, and you show him and he meets up with Ned. But you got to stop and think about this, that half of Peter Parker's class died 5 years ago. Dusted. The other half are now 5 years older. So they're now 21 years old, and have spent the last 5 years in a post-apocalyptic world where half of their friends' family and the universe disappeared. They're in a post-apocalyptic world on Earth. And that's what they lived with for 5 years. Our dead people just reappear, because that's what they said. Just bring them back right to this moment. So they reappear into a post-apocalyptic world, but not having been in the post-apocalyptic world. They just wake up one day with all their friends are 5 years older, their parents are 5 years older, whoever's been there is 5 years older, and probably very cynical and burned on life and everything, and in a pretty messed up world. They just jump right back into that one. So I don't think that you could just pick that up with Spider-Man Homecoming. I don't think that movie can just be like, yeah, it's the next day. You can't do, because that turns into a post-apocalyptic film of rebuilding the world. I don't think you can do that. So I don't know if this trailer they're going to put out probably this week is going to fill in some gaps and explain what's going on, or it's going to clarify. This is a prequel. This happened before. This is before Infinity War. Or it's an alternate timeline or something like that. I don't know what they're going to do with this movie to explain what exactly is kind of going on here. But I don't think that you can. It can't be a week later. A week later, they're back to school and they're heading off to Europe. What? They're in a post-apocalyptic world. What are you talking about going on a field trip to Europe? What are you talking about? So I don't know. I'm very interested to see what this next trailer is going to look like to provide some answers to what's going on with Spider-Man Homecoming. So, and then we kind of move on to kind of this Tony Stark send-off sequence where it has this voiceover calling back to the recording at the beginning of the film. That's probably why those recordings at the beginning of the film are so important, because it sets them up for the end of the film to be used here and kind of doing the send-off. We're heroes. This is part of the gig, and the time travel, if this works, I don't know if I'm coming back. And then saying his final words, I love you 3,000 to his daughter. And then it cuts to his actual funeral where they put the proof that Tony Stark has a heart little plaque on the water and send it off. And they do this long shot where they go through like the whole cast of the entire MCU, and you're walking through all the different faces. Even some people that it's like, William Hurt is here. William Hurt, these guys don't even get along. But because we have to put it in here. As they're going through, they get towards the end, and you've seen all these familiar faces, and then it shows a kid there. And when I first watched it, I was like, who's this kid right here? And afterwards, people are like, who's that kid? It's Tyke Simpkins. It's the kid from Iron Man 3. And he's in the credits, too. It's not just, I'm like, the second time I watched it, it's probably the kid from Iron Man 3. And then I watched the credits second time. It's like, yeah, that's Tyke Simpkins. That's who that is, which is a real nice touch. Because he looks different, because he's gone through puberty, it's confusing because you don't look at him and immediately go, yeah, it's the kid from Iron Man 3. But that's who it is. It's a real nice little detail of like, no, he really did follow up with people, and it's not, there were people he cared about, and they show up and things. That was a nice little touch. And then you pan through and you see Captain Marvel, and you have Nick Fury standing there. It's interesting that Nick Fury was in only that little bit. And I don't know if that's because they didn't want to like overplay everything, and they have to accept like the cast is big, we can't have everybody do something. But I mean, he's legitimately just like, see, Nick Fury's here. He's right there, Nick Fury. And then the scene ends. I mean, we move on to whatever's next. So the ones in here, they have a little scene out by the lake with those Scarlet Witch, Bruce Banner, and Hawkeye, I believe, talking about, I wish that she knew. And she's like, she knows. So have a nice little kind of finishing line there, and she can't come back. And then we get cut to Thor. So at this point in time, I'm like, wow, how many endings are on this movie? And so you have Thor following up what he talked with his mother, which is, I'm going to stop trying to be who I'm supposed to be and just try to be who I am, the best version of who I am. And he passes the crown of Asgard, not metaphorically speaking, to Valkyrie. Like, you're a leader. You've been running it. You're the king. You're in charge. I just need to be who I need to be. And then he walks off and he gets into the Guardians of the Galaxy ship. Another one of my theories is that this is where they were going to head with things, is that, sorry about my nose. Now I've been talking for literally an hour and a half. He gets on the Guardians of the Galaxy ship, and this is one of my theories, is that he was going to join this because there was so much chemistry. They were setting pieces up. Didn't think like you'd kill him off. So this could be a nice way to change things up and continue some things at the same time. So he shows up, Guardians of the Galaxy ship, and we get a little bit more banter between him and Star-Lord. As he walks in, Star-Lord is searching through a screen that says searching for Gamora. And she's not on the ship. I didn't pick up on this the first time. The second time I was like, oh, he's searching for Gamora. So I guess at the end of the movie, she just took off. So I guess that's going to be the plot of the next movie, or potential plot of the next movie, is that they're trying to track down Gamora. But banter and who's in charge and some fun jokes, and they're going to battle with knives. And so then Thor is now a guardian of the galaxy, and we move into our final little sequence where they're like, we got to take everything back. They got a time portal. I was like, oh, well, I think I know where they're going with this. And so he's got, bags of stuff, and he's holding the hammer, and he walks past Bucky, and Bucky says, I'm going to miss you. And I didn't catch that the first time, but if you watch the sequence the second time, you see that pretty clearly Steve talked to Bucky beforehand. Bucky knows what's going on here. He's not surprised at what's about to unfold. So Steve gets onto it. They're like, yeah, just take everything back. You'll be back in about 10 seconds. So, all right. And they say he can take as long as he wants, but he'll be back for us in 5 seconds. So he jumps and he never comes back. And Hulk's like, where is he? And Falcon's, where is he? And Bucky's just kind of standing there, and he's like, hey, Sam. Does this little deal. And you start walking over there, and you think Bucky would be the one that would talk to him. But like I said, pretty sure Bucky has been a part of this. Bucky knows things. And so Sam walks up, and you've got Old Man Steve there. Really good Old Man Steve. I'm assuming it's Chris Evans. The incredible old man makeup for him, and an old man performance. And, hey, just thought I'd do a living life. And I had some people comment on, like, this doesn't feel like something Captain America would do. But you're assuming that he just, started working in a factory or something like that. If you go back to the year 1945 or 1950 or wherever he decided to go back to and live out the rest of his days with Peggy, that doesn't mean that he stops helping people. Doesn't mean that he stops being Captain America, it just means that he's not Captain America in the present, and he's probably not Captain America publicly, but you can still do good things back in 1940, like in 1945. You can do good things in the 1960s. There's a whole bunch of things that you could do that don't require you to be in our present time, or I guess in the future from our time. So I was that was like a great little way to like, okay, we lost Tony, but she gave him the family, so you can feel okay with it. And then we lose Captain America moving forward, but at the same time, he got a life. But did we really lose him? Because you can go back to 1955, and 5 years from now, Chris Evans says, "Hey, I just want a dump truck full of money to fund my next directorial project." And then they give him a dump truck full of money, and they do Captain America 1955 or whatever. And you have, or 1960, whatever it is, there's all these things you could do with him just at a different point in time. And so it's a really pretty smart way. I don't know how it ties in with the rules of time travel that they established. It seems like, wait, why does this change things? And wait, didn't she have a husband already in what was already established and family stuff? And didn't he kiss the knees or what? Wait a minute. There's some problems here, but on an emotional level, a really nice little note to end on. And then he grabs the shield, gives it to Sam, and you're Captain America now. And, I've said this many times before. I'm not crazy about the Captain America's the guy with the shield. No, Steve Rogers is Captain America. I enjoy Captain America because it's Steve Rogers, and I enjoy that character, and I enjoy Falcon because he's Sam. Like the human underneath it is more interesting than what costume they're wearing. And that arc that they have, that's the interesting part. So it's like, oh, look, Captain America continues on because it's Falcon. No, it's a different it's a nice sentimental, it's a nice emotional note for that gesture, but it's not like, I don't get excited to like, oh, we have this new guy as Captain America. It's like, no, it's just a nice note for him to do that. And then we get our final sequence in here, our final shot, which is him dancing with Peggy, which as soon as he went back in time, I was like, the last scene of this is him dancing. That's what this is going to be. And just such a great bookend to the first Avenger, which ends on, I guess, asking to take her out on a date to go for a dance. He ends up in the future. He goes, I never made it to my dance. And now he gets to make it to the dance. It's a real sweet little note to like take some line that was kind of a throwaway line and pay it off 8 years later. Pretty cool little thing to do. So I thought it was a really nice note. And as I said, if you think like, would a hero like this do that? There's always evil in the world. He can fight evil back in all the other decades leading up till now in different ways and in different forms. So it's not out of character. It's just doing something different, which is to say he's going back to the time that he belongs, in fact. So there you have it. That's my very long review, spoiler discussion review, talking through the different points. To give kind of some final summary, how I feel it falls in the scheme of things, I think this one has the richest emotions, the biggest emotions. And on some of those, I almost would put this as like a top MCU film for me. Very easily, it has top emotions. But the thing that's making me debate where I'm gonna fall on this one is that Thor felt like he was in a different movie. It's a misstep. And I don't think that Avengers or Infinity War have a misstep as big as that. Likewise, I think that there's several sequences right there in the middle of the movie that are stretched out too long. And too many scenes of people like, we don't move on. Or sticking on cringy jokes about taking selfies and sticking too long on jokes about playing Fortnite. Sticking too long on drunk Thor telling this plot line of Thor the Dark World. It lingers a little bit too much on some of that stuff. And then you get to the middle section. I thought Battle of New York was a little bit weird at some point in time. And the movie's a little bit light on action for a 3-hour-long movie. Because you think the only big action sequence is the last hour of the movie. There's little action sequences in the first 2 hours, but there's not a lot of action in the first 2 hours of the movie. So I'm trying to decide what to do, because some of the best drama, better plot than Infinity War, more ambitious, some great payoff moments, but also some obvious missteps. I actually shot... as I did my ranking that's going to drop tomorrow, if you're watching this the night that I drop this, otherwise it's already up. I shot for my top 3, all 3 numbers for all 3 of them. I couldn't decide which one was going to fall where based off the different pieces, because I shot it before I saw it a second time, and I'm still editing it. I'm going to finish editing it tonight. So I still haven't decided where Endgame is going to fall, but as you can tell from this, it's pretty high up. pretty fond of this one. Very nice finale, very rich emotions, very nice payoff, some great fan service moments, and earning the ending that they gave us, having real stakes and consequences. And hopefully what this means is they're going to pause. So next year we get Black Widow, but it's a prequel. Then we get the Eternals, and hopefully it's, off in space. But let Earth rest. And I hope that Spider-Man Far From Home isn't a week later or something like that. Like, I want it to be a prequel or some reason that it's not right afterwards. And I want Earth to have time to rest to deal with what's happened. Maybe that's the plot line of Spider-Man Far From Home, and they're going to blow our minds like, oh, wow, they're going on a field trip to Europe to help fix the post-apocalyptic world. I hope they rest so that when we come back to Earth, it feels like we're returning to a world that's being rebuilt, but enough times has passed that it's not post-apocalyptic anymore. So I think I'll have a video in a week or two where I give my formal theories, especially once we get the Spider-Man Far From Home trailers to where things are going. Share your thoughts down below. Check out some merch at that link down below in the description. And thank you so much for watching.